Hello and welcome to the Royal Institution. My name is Michael.
And I'm Tom. Here at the Royal Institution, we have been doing science for 223 years. In that time, we've done some pretty interesting stuff. We've won Nobel Prizes, we've discovered different elements, and have done some groundbreaking research inventing things that have literally changed the world.
But what we really like to do is talk about science. And what we do here in our famous theatre are shows that everybody can come to on all different scientific subjects. Now, all of these shows are available on our YouTube channel. But also, every year we like to deep dive into a subject to bring you visual demonstrations as part of our Christmas lectures. And that's something we're really well known for. We do lots of science demos, and we're going to share some with you now. Now, these are taken from our Science in Schools program, where we take interactive shows into schools all across the UK.
So, we're going to show you some of the science behind rockets for 2022 STEM Clubs Week with the year theme, Space. By the end of this video, you'll know how to launch this bottle rocket across our beautiful theatre, but also more about rockets and projectiles in general so that you can try and launch your own.
We are really looking forward to seeing your rocket, so please share your pictures and share your videos using the hashtag STEMClubsWeek22. We're going to see how we will launch this beauty of a rocket using the 3 F's of rockets. Now those are fuel, forces and fire. So let's start with
fuel. So, what is a fuel? Well, a fuel is a substance that reacts exothermically with oxygen, which means the energy contained in the fuel is released when it's burned. Typical fuels you may think of are coal, oil, petrol, or maybe even gas. Of course, there are more modern alternates such as wind and solar power. Now, if we look at the 3 parts that make up fire, we have oxygen, fuel, and heat. This is called the fire triangle, and you may have heard of this already. Remove any one of these and you cannot create fire, and we need to know this for our rockets. I have a common sort of fuel. It's a type of food staple. It's a really good source of energy. In fact, it's so good, nearly every culture around the world has some version of it. It's flour.
Now, to get the most out of our fuel, we will need to think about the fire triangle and mix this flour with plenty of oxygen and also some heat. Now, Thomas has a great way to do this because he has the flour in a funnel, and attached to that is a tube that he's going to blow through. Now, that will make a cloud of flour, mixing the oxygen in the air. He also has a blowtorch, and that will provide the heat. So when he blows, the heat, fuel and oxygen will mix together, making fire. So let's see what happens on 3, 2, 1. Wow, that's kind of amazing. I love that demo, but obviously, please do not try this at home.
So, that's one type of fuel, but we're going to use a different fuel called butane. Butane is a fuel used to light things up in lighters. It's a bit like a blowtorch. We'll see more about that later though. But you don't always have to use a fuel to launch a rocket, which brings us nicely to our second F.
Forces. Okay, so please put your hands together. Oh no, sorry, not like that, like this. And what I want you to do is rub them together. Now, go a bit faster, a bit faster, a bit faster. Come on, hello, 3, 2, 1. Put them on your face. How do they feel? Ooh, how do they smell? Ew. Okay, hopefully they're really warm. Now, if you look at your hands, they are really, really smooth, but up close you'll see loads and loads of ridges. Think of your fingerprints. And when you rub these ridges together, they get caught on each other, and that creates heat. This is called active or kinetic friction, and this can slow things down, a bit like the brakes on your bike, and even stop you if you press them strong enough. We have a strong history with forces, with Michael Faraday investigating electricity and magnetic forces here in the basement at the Royal Institution. And he eventually invented something called the electromagnetic motor. Now, that is something that you will find everywhere in your phones, electric cars and trains, in fact, nearly anywhere where something moves. So let's look at this force called kinetic friction in detail and see how it helps build up pressure using some thermal energy. So we're going to be using something hot to make something move. So I'm going to put on some safety goggles, and Tom is going to bring up an empty paint tin. Now I'm going to pour just a tiny splash of cold water in it, and then I'm going to heat it up with my little blowtorch. And what happens when water gets really hot? Well, it boils. And when water turns into steam, when it turns into a gas, it expands. It becomes 1,650 times bigger than it was as water. So as it's trying to expand, we're not going to give it any space to expand into because I have put this lid on rather tight. Now, I'm hoping that the steam, which is hot, and our thermal store of energy will make the lid move. It's a small paint tin, and I don't know exactly how long this will take, so keep an eye on the lid, and here goes. Ooh.
It's okay.
No, that wasn't great. Now, I think we might need a bit more friction to make this extra impressive. So I've let that cool down. And what I'm going to do is create further ridges and scratches using this rough sandpaper. And I can scrape the rim here, in and around there, but also go onto the lid, just put some scratches in, to make a rougher surface for them both to really scratch against. So this time, when we heat the water, so it expands into a gas, the lid will be held in place because of friction, and it will be more difficult to move. And so the pressure will build and build and build until hopefully what we see is the pressure's getting up higher, the water sounds like it's about to boil, and I think hopefully we have a much better tin explosion. So our force is going to be supplied by our fuel, but you don't have to use fuel for your rocket. You can provide the force in another way. For example, we can use compressed air using a bike pump and a rocket like this. You might have used one of these before, but basically Tom is going to add pressure until the pressure gets so much that the cork, and then the amount of pressure released sends our rocket flying into the audience. So as you saw there, we could use compressed air using a bike pump and a rocket, building up the pressure, sending our rocket into our theatre. Or, more simply, you can just blow up a balloon and let it go. All of which leads us nicely to our third F. Fire.
Fire. So, how do we get all this off the ground? Well, we have to use this being fire. As we said earlier, we're going to use butane as our fuel, so let's explore that by making some butane bubbles. I'm going to make a soapy solution to make the bubbles in, just some water and some dish soap, which will need a bit of mixing. And then we've got the butane gas here. We're going to fill that in. So this is just a solution of soapy water, dish soap and water, which I'm putting the butane through. So these bubbles, instead of being full of air like most bubbles, these are actually full of highly flammable gas. So if I take a scoop of these bubbles, this is something you really can't do at home, which you'll see for now. If we light it, because they're full of flammable gas, you get a big ball of fire. That flame was able to spread out, but if we could contain the fire into a small container, it wouldn't be able to spread out, and instead the pressure would build inside the container and go up and up, a lot like we did with the paint can. But how are we going to light this fuel when we do that? What we're going to use for that is one of these marvels, an electronic match. Works a lot like a normal match, except instead of having to strike it against something, you can set it off with electricity. In this, there is a little filament, a bit like one of the old light bulbs, and wrapped around that is some explosive material. When you send a small amount of current through it, like from this 9-volt battery, the filament heats up, and that can set off the explosive material around it. So let's see that by putting a current through it.
So let's put this all together. Right, to start, we have our rocket that you saw at the beginning. This is a very strong, fizzy water bottle, and we've added a nose cone and some fins down the sides. Now, this is to stabilize its flight. Another F, we know, but we just didn't have time to go into the science of it.
First, we're going to have to add the fuel to our rocket. To do that, I'm going to measure it out with a syringe. Here we're going to put in 50 millilitres of it. I'm going to go right into the bottle. And if you can just cover that up, or I'll cover that up. It's important that we're not filling it entirely with fuel. Instead, we're going to allow it to mix with the oxygen that's already in the bottle from the air.
And we will then put this rocket onto our launch pad. Now, our launch pad is a cork, which is attached to a piece of tube to our retort stand. Now, the cork is going to add lots and lots of friction so that when the butane fires, it's not going to pop too fast. Unlike our smooth tin from earlier, it's going to be allowing the pressure to build up higher. Okay, now we're going to add this on.
And finally, we have our way of launching the rocket, and we go back to the spectacular Ematch. This has been pushed through the cork and attached through to these simple crocodile clips so that we can light it from further away. What we're going to do with the wires is we'll complete a circuit with the 9-volt battery, which will allow current to flow through the wire, lighting the tiny amount of explosive in the Ematch, which will then detonate the rest of the fuel in the rocket. The pressure will build up inside, and with all the friction of the cork, it'll really be able to hold it in. And then eventually, the internal pressure will overcome it, and the rocket will soar off in about that direction.
Okay, so I think we've got everything ready. We have our friction, we have our fuel, we have a fire. Shall we light our Ematch? Tom, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, so count with us on 3, 2, 1. And that explosive finish is how we at the RI launch a rocket, but there are many more ways to get yours into the skies. All throughout the week of the 22nd until the 26th of June, you can learn more about how to build rockets. Join in with amazing workshops and connect with space industry professionals to learn about their and your potential careers in this really exciting industry.
All of this is online, free and available through your STEM club. So get building those rockets, and remember to share your images and videos online using hashtag STEMClubsWeek22.
We look forward to seeing where your STEM club will take you.